Very good. I've just poured my tea. I'm here live at 3:27. A couple of minutes early. We're waiting for Kris Martin. I hope he doesn't have any problems joining us. And I hope he's got a cup of tea when he does. Clary. Hello, Clary. And Justin. Hi, guys. How are you doing? We are waiting for Kris Martin. It's official. Is he there?
That's sushi.
Do we have Kris Martin?
We're waiting.
We're waiting. Gosh, it's like waiting for Godot. Thomas Kelly just joined us. Danny first. Hey, Danny, how you doing? Where is Kris Martin? He has 2 minutes. Kris Martin.
Kris, we sent you the request to join. You need to accept us.
Press accept, Kris. It's okay. It's not a scam. They're not going to get your financial details. It's just us.
Oh, yes. Yes. You go live.
Gosh, we're so excited we knocked the camera over.
Sorry, that was me.
Ah! There he is. The man
Hi,
himself.
Sean.
How you doing?
Fine, and you?
Good God, you're growing your hair. Is that a result of being isolated? You're getting very long hair.
I am not longer.
I am not getting very long hair, as you could see.
Well, I was not intending to ask you whether this was the result of.
This is a result
Maybe you pulled it out.
This is the result of stress, my friend.
Yeah, I thought so.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
Good. We're all very fortunate, thank you. In the grand scheme of things, I suppose, comparatively, we're very fortunate. So, Kris, it's nice of you to join us for tea time on this Thursday. I hope you've got a cup of tea with you.
Technically spoken, yes.
Ah, well done. Good. All right. Well, it's a glass of tea.
Yeah.
So this must have been a very bittersweet moment for you, because just before we all went into lockdown for the coronavirus, you just opened a huge retrospective of your work at the museum in Ghent and your hometown where you are now. And at that very moment, how many days was it open for before it got shut down?
Only 3.
So you had the most important retrospective of your career that you'd worked on for a very long time in your hometown, not somewhere else. And it was open for 3 days. It must have been awful.
Well, yes and no, because, you know, we are witnessing a very, very interesting time. I mean, it's difficult, it's problematic, it's dramatic, but I mean, it's just when the world is changing dramatically that I have this show. And some people have seen it, like at the opening, there were more than 1,000 people. And now people start to visit the exhibition again. So the museum is open.
Yeah.
Not so many people are allowed, only like 30 per hour. So it's very quiet and people see it with other eyes. You know, they had to reflect, they have to start thinking about things. But I'm happy that the show is not depressing people. You know, I'm touching very big problems, but only touching without solving them.
But, you know, I have to say that I know it's an awful moment, and to even feel positive about certain things at this moment, you can, you know, one almost feels guilty, right? But I remember many years ago at one of the Venice Biennales, they did an incredible Titian exhibition in the Palazzo Ducale, and they kept it open until about midnight every night. And every night I was in Venice for about 10 days. I would go after dinner to see the exhibition. And there were very, very few people there at that time of night. And it was just an extraordinary experience to be able to stand in front of Tisha almost alone and really be absorbed by the work. So, yeah, you've got many fewer people who are going to be able to go and see your show in Ghent. But those who are going, I'm sure, is getting they're having an extraordinary experience.
Kind of, yes, because there are many people who are asking me, were you inspired by the Corona crisis, making those works? And I said, no, look at the year
Look
I
at the
made
date,
them.
yeah.
Yes, when you look at the date, it's 10 years earlier. And to be really honest, I would never allow myself to be inspired by the Corona crisis. I mean,
Yeah. Not something to be inspired by, perhaps awed or depressed by, but not inspired.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. But, you know, it's not the funniest work I'm making, but for me it was interesting to see at the opening when the first people came down the stairs, because it's on the first floor, it's the entire first floor. I wanted to see their faces, and they were all smiling. It's strange, but they were smiling. And for me it was the proof I'm not like a sledgehammer, you know, hitting people on the head, making them unhappy or depressed, because it's like a combination of laughing and crying. There's something sad, there's something funny, and I think it's a very difficult balance, but I'm trying to find it every single piece.
Somebody just asked on the comments earlier, what kind of show is it? I mean, would you describe it? It's not a retrospective, a true retrospective. It's a group of works.
Yeah.
That you very much, I'm sure, orchestrated with the curators. How would you describe the show?
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like a kind of nightmare in daytime.
I've never heard anybody describe their major mid-career museum retrospective as a kind of nightmare, but do explain that one to me, please.
Because it looks like to some people like a bad dream, but I try to make it beautiful. I try to make it even funny sometimes, but whether you want it or not, when you come out, you realize that you are mortal. We have an expiry date, all of us. And I don't know why, but as a kid, I was very, very absorbed by this idea. And it's also in the light of death that you feel alive, you know, and that you have to be aware that you have to use every single second to make it something, you know. And I don't know why. I can't explain, but in a cryptic way, I'm trying to explain this through my works. Yeah, it's a constant fight against mortality. And you know that you are losing the fight, but you don't get cynical, because that's the worst of all.
Well, it's actually a hugely interesting point in the context of your work, because I would say clearly you're you know, to some extent, your practice is conceptual and the work looks very different from work to work. There are consistencies, but I think, Kris, that you could be described as much as a poet, as being a poet, as being a visual artist. I mean, do you think that's accurate?
It's better than a nightmare anyway.
Yeah, I can't imagine who would come up to you at your major mid-career show that you just opened and tell you that your show's like a nightmare. But maybe we should, I hope you took some names and addresses.
Yeah, but maybe a better term is a group show. Maybe it's a group show of Kris Martin.
Yes,
because
that's very nice.
And there are many aspects. And I remember clearly, I had been busy for only a year, and one of the very first collectors that started to believe in my work and that bought my very first pieces, and he has some pieces in the museum, is Philippe Liebert, and a Flemish guy. And he said to me, Kris, when he had his first works up in his house, you have to be careful, because people don't recognize your work. I mean, people come in and they say, oh, nice work, who is this? And he says, oh, it's Kris Martin. And that's also nice. Who's this? Again, Kris Martin. And he said, you're like a group show of your own. And I always remember that, because it's a big challenge, but for me, the work shouldn't be uniform. I hope that after 20 years, people find some consistency, and that there is a red line going through it. And I love to use very, very different media, That's the core of my work, because it's inferior to the thought. I mean, I use a medium like a tool. Imagine you have to put a nail in the wall and you can choose, you have a goldfish, your cell phone, or a hammer. What do you use? For me, it's like a kind of evident thing. I never go out from, oh, let's do something in wood, or oh, maybe today I'm in the mood to make some bronze. Not at all.
Do you think that for many artists, having their work described as being a bit like a group show would be an enormous weakness? But I suspect for you it would be regarded as a huge strength. I mean, is that a challenge to you, or do you
Absolutely. Absolutely, because the moment I have something in my fingers, I let it loose and I force myself to change, because I don't like changes that much in general, also not in my life.
Right.
But somehow I've been forcing myself to change every time I think about another work. And that makes it interesting for me. You know, I could have been successful with one item, and I could, like some other artists, and I don't even want to judge them, but I couldn't do the same thing every day on and on. I couldn't. I'm a big fan of Onkawara, you know, that's one of my biggest heroes. I mean, I love his work, but a practice like him, I don't think I have the character and strength,
Right.
and the perseverance to do so. And also I am changing, so every single work is like a snapshot.
So one of the things about the show and challenge and the moment and responding is that that we were very conscious of in thinking about your show is that, of course, your audience evaporated. They couldn't see the show anymore. And so our response to that was to think about ways in which we could represent the work to a public if they wanted to see it around the world, and perhaps even to a larger public. And one of the things that we've done is to create a sort of virtual walkthrough of the show, which we've got on our website. So if people want to see the show, they can go and at least have some sort of experience of the show through that source. Did you like what we did? Were you happy with it, or?
It's beautiful. I told already Thomas that I'm very happy with it.
Okay, good. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, do you think that in future we're all going to be getting on planes less and going to see physically see shows less, and we'll be forced to experience them more through that kind of virtual presentation?
I mean, what is virtual?
I'm not sure anymore, frankly.
Sorry? I mean,
I'm not sure anymore.
This talk is virtual, but I see you, and of course it's incomparable to a normal talk when we see each other. But I think it's fantastic that we have this substitute. Imagine we wouldn't have that. And I think also a work on a website can trigger somebody's imagination, and I mean, and then further you can talk further about it, and then maybe one day you will discover it physically. But I think it's really worthwhile to present works on the internet. I think it's a very interesting medium. I'm completely convinced about it, and I really hope that people will travel less for stupid reasons. You know, it had to stop somehow. Somehow it had to stop.
You did a project for us last week, which was really beautiful. We did a visit with you, a sort of virtual studio visit. We asked you to present something that you were working on in the studio, and you did an absolutely fantastic project and great job. You took us on a kind of mental tour. Mm-hmm. You got together a load of old maps, obviously in the moment of being able to use digital media to travel and look anything up on a phone. We don't need the old maps that we used to use. You took the maps and then you took us on a journey on those maps, and it was hugely evocative. Can Can you talk about what you did with that? I mean, I personally just absolutely love the project, and I know we had incredible feedback from it. So could you describe for us what you did in that process?
But basically, I do the things I like. I still do them. The things I like when I was a kid. And I have the luxury to, meantime, to make it my job. Like, for instance, when I was a kid, I could gaze at road maps for hours and hours. And I still love it. And I go to places I know, I go to places I don't know at all. And then I just imagine those places. And I had something like, okay, Sean Kelly is asking me, what are you doing right now? Could you make us a little movie? I did it it was just one shot. It's maybe totally not professional, but it's just me. And I'm kind of adapting in a way I would have done as a kid. And I asked friends and neighbors, do you have those old road maps? And they all still have them. Somehow they're like too precious to throw them away, but they don't use them anymore because they all have this GPS system in the car. But I think road maps are very beautiful. So what I did was I made like virtual tours with a permanent marker. And so I always tried to write the word idiot. And it's just existing roads and avenues. And so I really made an effort to write this word idiot. And then I thought to myself, nobody would travel that way. I mean, if you would do so, of course, you will go through like very known places, like hotspots, but you also discover things you would never have discovered without that very particular tour. And so I was traveling. I took a map in the morning, and then another one, and hours passed by, and I have to admit, I had fun. So and it's also an example of my practice, because I just don't do it like for fun. I think every single action should be like an extension of what I have been doing from the beginning. And like, it's not out of being too humble that I have to say that I have the feeling that I never create. I have more the feeling that I find. I'm a finder. I mean, when I was a kid, I found the craziest things. We were hiking in the mountains. I found a golden watch. I found old medieval coins in the fields. I don't know, but I'm a good finder. And so with every single piece, I have the impression that I have found something, and that I try to give it or to make it tell a new story. So same thing with the maps. I just mentioned the word idiot on existing roads. I mean, I don't invent them, they are there. But I'm making them visible, and the idiot is not just a word, it's a very important word. It's one of the most important motives in my work, the idiot.
Well, you might need to explain that to people listening if they don't know why idiot is such an important reference point for you.
Because in literature, it's my absolute hero. I mean, it's somebody...
so you're talking about Dostoevsky?
Dostoevsky's Idiot, yes. I love that story. And it's also very sad and very funny at the same time. But it's somebody who is driven by compassion. And I think compassion is key. Also the key to make society, to make the world survive. I mean, without compassion, forget it. And of course, you could see it also as an incarnation of Christ. It's completely full of Christian morality, and that's also a very big interest of mine, because I was born and raised within this culture and this moral system. And instead of criticizing, you have to be criticizing it. But I'm more an a la carte believer. There are very, very important and very nice things in Christian morality, and things we shouldn't forget. And so, for me, the idiot is an incarnation of Christ. In Petersburg in the 19th century, like Parsifal in Wagner's opera, or maybe Don Quixote. They're all the same people who somehow don't function in society, and that's also a little bit autobiographic. I mean, I had never had the feeling that I was really functioning until I made my dysfunction my function.
Do you mean by being an artist?
Yeah, I guess so. And I always fought against that cliche, but it's a cliche for something. I really tried to function. I mean, I had a job for 6 years, but It was disastrous.
What were you doing?
I learned a lot. I was working in a printing factory and I designed books for artists and fashion designers.
Uh-huh.
That was the very first thing I did after my studies. And then
That's very, very similar to Anthony McCall, actually, who was a very, very prominent graphic designer for many years, interrupted his career to his work as an artist to have a career.
Mm-hmm. But the thing was, I always had the feeling that I had to do something functional. It started with my with architecture. I'm an architect, and I love architecture. But I did my practice for 2 years, but I didn't like the job. I love architecture, but to function as an architect, that's another story. And then more and more, I went to the graphic design, but it was still functional. It should. I had to make a book, I had to make an object, I had to make a publicity item whatsoever, but you are still answering a question. And more and more I had the feeling that I'm better in asking something, I'm better in the questions than in the answers. And that led to my work in general. I mean, when you see the SMAC exhibition, I mean, it's just a bunch of big questions.
Yeah, it's a super interesting point because I think you very much in common with somebody like Marcel Duchamp. You are not in the business of providing answers that are closed circuits or systems. You're very much in the business of the gentle provocateur, which is why I think the work has a lot in common with poetry or concrete poetry, where you're really asking questions and it's up to the viewer to answer those questions for themselves. And in many cases, maybe they come to completely different conclusions.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also avoiding judgment. I really don't like to judge. And I can give you an example. I have a series of works and it's ongoing. It's called Endpoints. And it's very simple. Out of books that are somehow to me personally or for the entire world have a certain importance, I'm cutting out with a scalpel the period, the very last point. So I have a tiny piece of paper, like 2 by 2 millimeter, and I mount it on a sheet of paper, always the same size. So actually it is a collage. And then with a pencil, I write endpoint of, the title, the author, and my name. And it's very strange, but first of all, you come to very, very hilarious sentences, like endpoint of, recently I did endpoint of Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler.
God.
Yeah, but you read endpoint of Mein Kampf. Of course, it's the worst book of all, but it's kind of neutralizing something, you know. And then I combine it with other books, like Donald Trump's books. It's also very, very funny.
Well, that seems to be a very appropriate relationship.
Yeah, endpoint of the America we deserve. That's fantastic. So, and if you combine all, and there is Stalin, and there is Lenin, and others.
Maybe if you could throw Franz Kafka's America in there, we'd have the entire picture.
But what I wanted to say is when you combine all those endpoints, you don't judge anybody. Of course, I do personally, but I don't want to express it. I would rather love to make the audience judge, not me, but I give the opportunity to judge. And so by combining all those, like Das Kapital of Marx, endpoint of Das Kapital, imagine, by combining them, you have a very strange feeling, like they have one thing in common. They are uncomparable and everybody know what they are standing for. But if you see them, they're all the same. I mean, they're all ending with this period. And that's the only thing I do.
Is the period being placed in relationship to where the paragraph on the last page finished? Or is it always in the same place on each one?
It's always the very last point, always the same place. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Kris, in a way, you've answered this question already. But if I'm going to ask it a different way, if you were trained as an architect and you worked as a designer, but if you weren't an artist, what now, with your experience now, if you weren't an artist, what would you be, do you think?
A gardener.
A gardener.
Yeah.
So you see, I've always felt that your work had a very poetic resonance to the work of Ian Hamilton Finlay, who was in some respects misunderstood, but an amazing artist who created a garden, and that was his greatest work, Little Sparta. Is that an artist that you feel anything in common with?
Maybe, yes, because it's my alter ego. I'm every day in my garden. I'm lucky to have a garden, and for me, without the garden, I would go crazy. I have been living in Ghent, which is a relatively small city, but I lack the garden. And I think for my mental health and also for my work, it's giving me a boost. I need contact with nature. And what I like most is, because this is called nature, but Flanders, you have to know, every square inch has been touched by humans. It looks nice, it's green, but in fact it's artificial since the medieval period. And therefore, the only thing that really can relax me is something that nobody touched. Take a stone. My house is full of stones, but there is no ugly stone. There are billions and trillions of stones, but every single stone is perfect, for it's not an artifact. And people never throw a stone in the trash can when they find a stone. They would at least open the window or the door and throw it out.
Put it back in the landscape.
Yeah, of course. Somebody who is throwing a stone in the trash can must be completely crazy.
You've actually used stone in your work a lot, found objects. And I mean, there's a wonderful work which is a stone clock that I'm thinking of particularly, or there's a work in the show in Ghent, which is made from stones, which refer to the alphabet. How much effort does it take to find the material to make a piece like that?
A big effort, to be honest. But it was on a beach in Turkey, and we were on holiday. And you know, my wife and the kids, they like a real holiday, like the sun and the sea. And as a kid, I like it as well. But if I would lay down on a beach, after 10 minutes, I go crazy. I need to do something. So what I started to do, it was not a sandy beach, but it was a pebble. And I started to look for stones. And suddenly I discovered that some stones had letters, but natural letters, the entire alphabet, by little quartz lines in it.
Right.
And I was really... It's really stunning that you see letters that nobody has made. I mean, it took millions of years to finish this process, to make them smoothly round. And then, of course, there are no letters. I mean, I see letters, but they are not intended to be letters. And then I was, for an entire week, I was searching for stones with letters. And other tourists said, "Oh, can I help you, sir? Have you lost something?" I was really annoying. I had something. Leave me alone. I'm making a piece. Yeah.
But and it's remarkably consistent with your comment earlier about when you were a kid and you had this propensity for finding materials. I mean, maybe it's just now that you're organizing yourself to find them better.
Yeah, I think so, because there are so many objects already that I don't feel the need to make new ones. Right. Sometimes. Yeah. Right. And when you combine existing objects, sometimes just combining two objects, they can create a completely other story, and that's a daily exercise.
Well, that is the very nature of poetry, isn't it? So, Kris, what are you reading at the moment? I know you're somebody who spends a lot of time reading. So, what are you most consumed by in your isolation? What are you reading? What are you listening to music-wise?
Reading, not that much at the moment. Listening to music, yes, a lot. I'm a very big fan of late medieval music and Renaissance music, and especially the Flemish composers like Johannes Ockerghem and Yeah, the polyphonic music is very important to me. And it's strange. I'm fond of old classical music and heavy metal.
You're a fan of classical music and heavy metal,
Yes,
Flemish Renaissance music and heavy metal,
and Italian Renaissance music.
and
Yes,
Italian Renaissance. How on earth do those things coalesce?
they are very similar.
Okay, this I've got to hear.
That's very similar. The complexity of some polyphonic music is just stunning. I mean, it's fantastic. But if you look closer to heavy metal music, you will discover that it has nothing to do with the regular pop music you hear on the radio, because most of those guys are amazing technicians. Like take a drummer, for instance. I mean, a heavy metal drummer is not just a drummer, you know, and they are writing scores. They know music. It has nothing to do with the form, but it's I'm very intrigued by the high complexity and the skills of those musicians.
No, that's a super. I mean, that is an incredibly unexpected combination. I would never have come up with that. It's super, and I never have thought that you were interested in that.
I don't look like a metalhead, but I've been listening to heavy metal music since my studies. Yeah, so I think for 30 years. Yeah,
It's a whole other side to your. It's a whole other side to your personality that I hadn't expected, Kris.
And I love heavy metal concerts. You know why? Even I go with my kids to heavy metal concerts. And you know why? When I would lose my youngest son of 4 years, normally it's huge panic, you know, you freak out. On a heavy metal festival, suddenly you have 6,000 babysitters. They're the kindest people in the world. And
this is one of the more unexpected conversations that we've had on Tea Time.
There is hardly drugs, there's just beer. Like a friend of mine is organizing a heavy metal festival in Belgium every year, and unfortunately it's cancelled for this summer. It's horror because these are my days, you know, it's 3 days of, yeah. And it's now the 11th time he's done it last year, and so far there was no incident. Never. It's love and peace and very good music, but okay, enough of that.
It's not exactly Woodstock, is it? Heavy metal weekend. What do you think that you're going to take away from this moment of self-isolation? I mean, we talked a lot about the fact that it's almost purpose-made for artists to be isolating at this time, because they are, by their very nature in the studio, they are isolated. But what do you think you're going to take from this moment of isolation in the studio?
Well, this is not something new, like you say. I need isolation to concentrate properly. I need to work alone, and I'm used to work alone, and this is the very condition to make a piece. But not without everyday life, and that's for me quite horrible that I had to lack just normal social contact and not seeing every person as a potential enemy, you know. And why was he or she a potential enemy? I personally am not so afraid of this coronavirus, yeah, but for instance my mother, if she would get it, she would certainly not survive it. So out of respect for her, I need to follow the rules. And my practice is only possible when I have the combination of the two. Like, you have been in my little shed in the garden, you remember?
Sure.
Well, I'm a quite analog person. I never watch television in the evening, never. Impossible. So what we are doing just like in the 19th century. I mean, it's dark, you cannot work anymore. What do? Well, you see each other and you talk, you have conversations. And I need this. It's like the most important source for my work. It's this contact and this normal and constant contact with people and all kinds of people. Because if people ask me, what is your inspiration? it's just normal everyday life. I mean, this is for me the most beautiful, and it's without an end, you know. For me, everything is exotic. When I step out of my door, it's already exotic. When I walk in the garden, it still is exotic to me. And funnily, you have people who have traveled the world and they have no insight whatsoever. So you could ask yourself, all those millions of gallons of kerosene, why did they burn it? And then on the other hand, you had the Greek philosophers, and it's amazing, people are still reading what they invented under an olive tree. So my inspiration is life, and I'm never bored. When I was a kid, I had never had this, the feeling of being bored for 1 second. Then I just started to watch the clouds or flowers or whatever. I mean,
so is this moment of deprivation of that human contact, is this moment enriching for you, or is it debilitating because you're missing it very much?
It's annoying. It's annoying. I mean,
Right.
It's annoying. I mean, I can miss it like anything. Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to being able to do when we return to the world, even though it'll be different? What would be the first thing you'd do?
I would give a handshake.
Without somebody flinching, hopefully.
This is a very important gesture. I mean, with a handshake, you feel so much. Some people squeeze your hand, and some people, you know, they touch it in a way, oh my God, is this really necessary? I mean, you have so many kinds of communication, and one is there is no substitute for some. And I think physical contact is something totally necessary, and it's part of humanity. And now we know how important this is. It's not new what I'm saying. There are millions of people who are saying this. But yeah, I think to shake somebody's hand without having this corona thought, that would be wonderful.
Well, on that note, we're out of time, and we will extend a very warm digital handshake to you through the social media airwaves, and we look forward to seeing you in person very soon. And your exhibition continues. I hope a lot of people get to see it. If they don't, they can go to the website and they can get a sense of the show from what we've put out there. I want to thank you very much for joining us today, and for taking us on some unexpected detours in your thinking from heavy metal to Dostoevsky. What a journey! Thanks, Kris.
There are more things to come. Thank you so much.
That's what wandering along without a map should be.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Say hello to your family.
Thank you, and yours too. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.